Hello and welcome to today's lesson. So we are continuing our unit with inequalities, and today what we're going to do are two-step or multi-step inequalities. So all the rules still apply with your order of operations, and remember, if you divide or multiply by a negative, you need to flip your inequality sign. All right, so here is your first example. Please remember that when you're taking these notes, you probably want to stop and pause the video at different times and copy things down. You can copy it down at the end so you have an example. After you do an example, then you should try the next one on your own and then come back. So I try to do two of them. So the first one you can watch, the second one, give it a try on your own, and then go back and play the video and see how you did. All right, here we go. So we're going to solve this. We want to get y by itself. So the first number I am going to move is going to be an 8. And so this is a positive 8. So I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides. And the whole point of me doing this is for this to cancel out. And you're left with negative 3y. So we have one less thing. Now we subtracted, so there's no flipping. And 29 minus 8 is 21. All right, now this says negative 3 times y, so the opposite of times is divide. So we're going to divide by negative 3 on both sides. And so we have y, and 21 divided by negative 3 is a negative 7. So what is our action right here? Our action is divide by negative. And when you divide by a negative, you need to remember to flip this sign. All right, so now when we graph, I have 0, I have a negative 7. Because it has this equal sign underneath it, I am going to have a closed circle here at negative 7 and any number less than. So it goes to the left, any number less than. All right, so you should give this one a try. So you should stop this one, give this one a try, see how it goes, and then resume. All right, so we've got a 6 here. So I'm going to subtract 6. That says plus 6. So we're going to do the opposite operation. So I'm going to subtract 6. So I have negative 18. There is no flipping of any sign when we just subtract. Okay, and here we've got 3x. So I'm going to divide by 3, divide by 3. Negative 18 divided by 3 is negative 6, and then I have x. Now, what is my action? My action was to divide by a positive, so there is no flipping. Now, right here, when we go to graph, there's a lot of students that make a mistake here because notice how this letter is not first. So I highly recommend that you rewrite this so that the letter is first. So we have x, we have the negative 6. We flipped things. So when you flip things, you got to make sure that you flip that sign. It still needs to point towards the x. So it still needs to point towards the x. Now that it is written with your letter first, this helps a lot of kids. So we have the closed circle because we have the line underneath. Now it says any number less than, and less than goes to the left. All right, let's try this next one here. So this one is basically the same thing, but it's just looking a little bit different here. It's a division. So do you see how this says divide? So the opposite of dividing by 3, the opposite operation would be to multiply by 3. So here, these 3's cancel. So we have 1 minus 2n, and we multiplied by a positive, so I'm not doing any flipping. 7 times 3 is 21. All right, so this is a positive 1, so I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. So we have negative 2n. My action was to subtract, and we don't do any flipping when we subtract, so 21 minus 1 is 20. Now this is negative 2 times n. The opposite of times is going to be divide by a negative 2. So these are going to cancel or reduce to 1. So n, 20 divided by negative 2 is a negative 10. And what is my action right here? What did I do? I divided by a negative. And because I divided by a negative, I'm going to flip my sign. All right, so it looks like this is a closed circle at -10. And it says less than, so I'm going to shade to the left. All right, so the distributive property. Do you remember us doing the distributive property? So we're going to take 3 times whatever's inside. So 3 times x, so we get 3x, and 3 times -8, so we get -24. All right, you try the next one. So stop the video, give it a try, and then resume it. So -5 times x is -5x, and -5 times a -7. -5, -7 is a plus 35. All right, let's put that to practice in a problem here. So we do have this distributive property. So there's a couple ways that we can start this. Okay, so let's do this distributive property first. So 2 times x. Oh, I think I skipped a problem here. I did. Let's do this one first. Sorry about that. Let's do this one first before we get to that one. So we're going to take -4 times 2. So we get -8. Then we're going to take -4 times a -x. So kind of like just that last one I did where it says a negative and a negative gives you a positive. All right, and then just copy your symbol and your 8. All right, so now it looks kind of like what the first problems we were doing. Because this says -8, we are going to add 8 to both sides. So these cancel out. So we have 4x, and my action was adding, so there's no flipping. 8 plus 8 is 16. Now what I'm going to do here is divide by 4, divide by 4. So my action is to divide by a positive. And when you divide by a positive, nothing crazy is happening. So this simplifies to 1x, which is just x. Leave this symbol exactly like it is because I divided by a positive, no change. 16 divided by 4 is 4. Alrighty, so it looks like we have a closed circle here at 4 and anything less than. All right, on to this next problem. So I already kind of started this here, so we are going to start that distributive property right now. So we're going to do 2 times x and get 2x. Then we're going to take 2 times 4. Positive times a positive is still a positive, greater than 3. So right now there's a couple different ways that you guys can do this, and they're both probably totally correct. So we have a plain number here, and we have another number here. They're called constants, and they're on the same side. So it's just called combining like terms. So 3 plus 8, so I have 2x plus 11 is greater than 3. So combining like terms, we're not going to do any kind of flipping. It's when you do your math on both sides. All right, so that says plus 11, so I'm going to subtract 11. So 2x. Now what's my action? My action was to subtract, and there is no flipping when you subtract. No flipping. So just leave your symbol, and 3 minus 11 is a -8. Now it says 2 times x, so what we're going to do is divide by 2. So what's my action? I divided by a positive number, so no flipping. So x is greater than -4. Now it has nothing to do with the fact that this answer is negative. It has to do with my action. My action was divide by a positive, so there's no flipping. All right, when I graph this one, there's no line underneath, so that means we're going to have an open circle, and this says any number greater than. I've got my letter first, so when you have your letter first, this will point the way we want it to, and just by reading it, we're talking about any number greater than -4. All right, we have one problem left. You're going to see a few of these on your assignments coming through. So the average of Jim's test. So remember, average. I know you guys talked about this because my son talked about this, and I know it's a 5th grade standard when you're trying to find the average on the MCA test. So on your MCAs, they asked for the mean or the average, which means you add things up and divide by however many you're going to do. Well, in this particular example, they're talking about Jim taking 2 test scores, which means I'm going to add 2 things together, and then I'm going to divide by 2. Okay, if Jim was taking 3 tests, then I would add 3 numbers together. Whoops, I didn't write that very well, and divide by 3. So the average is that you're always going to divide by however many that you're doing. So Jim would like to keep an A average. To do that, he has to be greater than or equal to 90. Okay, so Jim got a 95 on his first test. What can he get in on a second? And what can he get? We don't know what that is, so that's when we give it an X. So first test is 95, second test, we don't know. That's what we're trying to find out. What does he have to get in order to keep an A average or above 90%? So how do we solve this? Well, this says divide by 2. The opposite of dividing by 2 is going to be to multiply by 2. So these simplify to 1. So we have 95 plus X, and my action was to multiply by a positive. So there's no flipping, and 90 times 2 is 180. So now, how do I solve this? Is I am going to subtract 95 from both sides. So I have X, my action shot, or my action here is to subtract, so there's no flipping, so I have greater than or equal to, and 180 minus 95 is 85. So as long as Jim scores 85 or better on his test, because this says anything greater than 85, then he will get an A in the class. Okay, now remember, if they said 3 tests, it would be something like 80 plus 70 plus what, and you would divide by 3, and then that would have to be greater than or equal to whatever it is he's trying to do better than. Okay, so just remember the average that you're going to divide by however many there are. So in this one, there was 2 tests, first test plus we don't know. In my red example over here, it's 80 plus 70 plus the third test we don't know. And then you divide by 3. Alrighty, I think we're at the end here and we are ready for your homework time. So good luck on your homework.